I'm your host, James. Just with me today is Mr. John Cameron. And you know, John, it's Veterans Day here next week. And, you know, as a veteran yourself, I thought you might want to have a little word for us all as we start the show.
First I want to thank all the people who gave some years of their lives, and some people who gave some of their limbs, and some people who gave their lives to defend. I want to read the oath, or part of it. The U.S. military oath of enlistment is a pledge to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, to bear true faith and allegiance to it, and to obey the orders of the President and officers appointed. And I took that oath very seriously, thinking that most of our enemies were foreign. But you know, right now a lot of them are domestic, and I think it's really important to kind of honor veterans, because Veterans Day is coming up, by identifying people who are enemies of the Constitution that protects all of our wonderful rights that we have, that are negative rights. There are no positive rights, but somebody else is going to talk about that. And you know, just vote and be heard and be proud, because you know, we beat this country up and we whine and complain about it, but very few places where you can say what we say on this show on a regular basis and not spend some time in jail or maybe in worse places. So again, I want to thank all the other vets out there for their service.
Thank you, and thank you for your time. All right, we're going to move on to Mr. Richard Fields this week. You know, the federal government is, as the recording of the show, is still shut down. Mm-hmm. So let's see what Richard has.
Have we noticed mostly?
Me? No.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Yeah.
But, you know, it doesn't mean others haven't. Yeah. So let's see what Richard has to say.
Hi, this is Richard Fields with this week's Report from the Fields. As of today, the so-called shutdown of the federal government has lasted a record 36 days, and the vast majority of us have hardly noticed. That's probably because the part of government that consists of transfer payments, you know, like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, VA benefits, interest on the federal debt and such, has not been shut down at all. However, for arcane reasons, one transfer program is on the verge of being shut down. That would be the Supplemental Assistance Nutrition Program, or SNAP, previously known as food stamps. 42 million people, or 1 in 8 Americans, now receive SNAP benefits. If 1/8 of the population stops getting the free food they are accustomed to, it translates into an election-changing voting bloc. 2 centuries ago, the Scottish historian and judge Alexander Fraser Tytler is thought to have said, "A democracy cannot exist as a permanent form of government. It can only exist until the voters discover that they can vote themselves largesse from the public treasury." We're getting close. So much for our democracy. It's interesting to explore how this transpired. Back in the 1930s, during the government-caused Great Depression, farmers had produce they could not make a profit on at prevailing market prices. Meanwhile, urban consumers were lining up at soup kitchens to avoid going hungry. In an unholy deal between farm state congressmen and urban congressmen, the precursor of food stamps was started. Artificial demand for food commodities was created by giving urban poor people stamps which could be used to buy food. Grocers could in turn get reimbursed by the government for the stamps. Win-win for farmers and needy consumers, at the expense of taxpayers who paid to buy the stamps, plus a healthy bonus for the bureaucrats hired to administer the program. That program ended in 1943, but was revived by who else? Lyndon Johnson, as part of his Great Society welfare programs. The cost has risen from about $30 billion per year in the 1970s to $145 billion during the government-forced economic shutdown during the pandemic. Emergency spending measures during the pandemic have not ended. Of course, what we have here is a perfect illustration of the cycle of government creating a problem and then implementing unwise policies to fix the problem, thus creating even more problems. Creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913 gave the government the power to create money out of nothing. That led to the asset bubble of the Roaring Twenties. When the bubble popped, the result was the economic depression of the 1930s. And of course, the government tried to fix the ensuing problems of poverty with FDR's New Deal welfare programs, one of which was food stamps. That same cycle rhymed in the inflationary 1970s, which was caused by the government simultaneously spending on the Vietnam War and massive increases in welfare spending with LBJ's Great Society. In this century, we're seeing it again with two Fed-fueled asset bubbles, the real estate bubble of 2008 and the pandemic spending bubble of 2020. Both have resulted in consumer price inflation in addition to asset price inflation. And the latest asset bubble in stocks and bonds is poised to pop anytime it finds a needle. All of this snap controversy illustrates an interesting philosophical point: the difference between positive rights and negative rights. Negative rights are well expressed by the Bill of Rights. They consist of the right not to be abused by the government or other people in various ways. Positive rights are the ideas that people have the right to material goods or something provided by someone else's labor. For instance, a right to health care necessitates the labor of healthcare workers or the labors of others to pay the healthcare workers. Free food necessitates the free access to food, something that others have to use their labor, namely farmers, to produce. Libertarians are all about protecting negative rights, but unilaterally opposed to the idea of positive rights, which are nothing more than partial slavery for those providing the labor to provide them. Will fear of alienating the 42 million people who depend on SNAP end the government shutdown? On the other hand, reopening the government will mean that the House will have to reconvene and swear in the most recently elected member of that body. That would be Adelita Grijalva, who has promised to be the needed 218th signature on Thomas Massey's discharge petition to force a vote on releasing the Epstein files, and embarrassing a lot of powerful men in both politics and the upper echelons of the business world. Which fear will prevail? As the Chinese curse predicts, we are living in interesting times. I'm Richard Fields, and that's this week's Report from the Fields. See you again next week.
Thank you, Richard. Much appreciated. John, with the government still shut down, we had the election yesterday, and we're going to go ahead and move on to our next topic. The Democrats, they're calling it a big election win, but there really wasn't much of a surprise. I mean, okay, so we knew Namdami was going to win in New York, 6 months ago when the primaries were, right?
Whenever, 3 months, something
4
like
months,
that.
whatever it was. We knew this was going to happen.
Yeah.
We knew that the likelihood New Jersey governor was going to go Democrat. The only one that was, to me, was even remotely a surprise would have been Virginia switching back to Democrat from Republican. But Virginia does that. It's just kind of what they do. And what I noticed is the real thing especially in Virginia and Pennsylvania, was turnout. From last year, turnout was 80-something%, and this year it was 49%.
Where was that?
In Pennsylvania. So in 2025, or last year, 2024, the election, Pennsylvania had an 82% turnout, and yesterday's election was 51%.
Somebody made a very good point about elections now and the news media. I don't know why I call them the news media. The legacy media propaganda machine making a big deal about what's basically a local election having an effect on me here in California. So I don't really care. I care that, and I'm kind of excited about New York having a socialist/communist mayor. I'm really finally, the guy's 30 some odd years old, and this is his first real job. So I'm excited. His mom and dad should be proud that he finally got a job.
But socialists didn't win everywhere, right? There was a socialist running in Minneapolis, and he lost to the centrist.
Centrist, quote unquote, just
centrist Democrat.
It's hard left leaning, but not quite socialist.
Yeah.
Well, the point is that it doesn't really affect me what happens in these other places. I'm very excited about it happening in New York, because the only way to cure this socialism nonsense, it's a fantasy, is to have a big crash and burn. Like when New York City, I'm not going to say it's going to catch on fire, that probably all the lights are going to go out, because all the rich people, the people that, you don't have to have the stock market in New York. Now with the way everything's run in this world, you can have it in Miami. And in Miami, they want rich people. They apparently don't want rich people in New York. So there's going to be a big crash and burn, and people are going to go, God, let's never do that again. And then they're going to forget 20 years from now and do it again. So this great, huge example of what not to do to govern people to be successful and rich and happy is going to happen in New York. That's the only reason I care.
When you say crash and burn, last night I saw a story about New York. Some trash caught fire, which caught a car on fire. And so as the firefighters were there putting out the car fire, the car exploded. And so New York is already catching on fire because they can't pick up the trash. You know, so it's already starting to catch fire, and the guy hasn't even taken. This is what I don't understand. They have New York is a disaster area, and they got a guy who just wants to do more of the same.
Yeah, make it worse.
They're not even changing anything. They just want more of what what's already failed. I don't understand it. Well, but the question is it going to do anything at all to the federal government shutdown?
No. And I read about it, and nobody has really convinced me that it's going to affect it either way, because unless, you know, the Democrats are convincing themselves that by fighting Trump on this, that the American people are going to be behind them, and they're going to win big in the next election. And the Republicans are convinced that by not, we're going to talk about Obamacare next, by not
yeah, we can go ahead and move on to
flushing money down the toilet. Well, you know,
let's go ahead and move on to Obamacare. Let's go, because there's a consequence to this, right?
Yeah, Obamacare was sold as you get to keep your doctor. It was a lie. Health care is going to not get more expensive. It got heinously expensive. And then lie after lie after lie after lie. And they fixed the impact of the lies by pumping like $1 trillion into Obamacare. And so what the Republicans are doing is saying, no, let's expose the lie. If you want to give away all this free health care in California or in New York or whatever to people, then you pay for it. We're not going to bail you out.
Well, this is the thing. The Obamacare subsidies actually paid for the price increases.
Yes.
This is what we know. We've known this from education.
Yeah.
Anytime the government pumps a lot of money into a system, the only thing that happens is they get more expensive.
Yeah. And more people are employed by that system, and they, in turn, generally take that money in political donations and give it to the party in power, who in turn gives it back to them so they can hire more people and so on. It's a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah,
pure and simple.
It just,
yeah.
And here's the thing. I saw a story about somebody who said their insurance costs were going to be over $2,000 a month. I'm going, well, at that price, why would you even bother buying insurance? Why would you just pay cash? Because at $2,000 a month, that's $24,000 a year. Even if you have a $200,000, you know, emergency medical bill, you can pay that off in what, 10 years?
Or just do what we used to do. Right now we have prepaid medical with a lot of overhead. And what a lot of people used to do is they had medical insurance to cover something major. And I'm not even talking about, you could get an arm set and x-ray and all the rest of that back before we had all these layers of bureaucracy for a couple $100. And now because we have this prepaid medical, which means they have lots of money, everything costs more. But you get a policy, you have some money in savings, hopefully, because you're a rational adult, right? And that covers your normal medical care up to the point where you might need treatment for cancer, or you might need a gallbladder removed or whatever. And that, anything over $10,000 or whatever, that policy pays for it. And that is a way, way, way cheaper policy. And most people can afford that kind of thing.
Yeah, a catastrophic care policy, right?
Yeah.
Where if something catastrophic happens, the policy kicks in and covers your costs. But routine care, the cheap stuff, is you're kind of responsible for covering yourself. And we've flipped the script, essentially, somehow.
Because I have, well, then again,
And with copays, John, I'm noticing that my copay costs as much as it would cost me to pay cash for a doctor if I didn't have insurance.
Well, my copay is a little less than yours, but that's only because I married well. I'm not saying you didn't. What I'm saying, my wife works in healthcare, so I have, and then also I'm a disabled vet.
Yeah.
So as people told me when I finally went to the VA at age, anyway, a few years ago, to see if they could help me with some of these things that I hurt 40 years ago, they said, John, you already paid for all this. I went, what? No, I didn't. They said, yeah, you paid for it when you jumped out of airplanes and carried a machine gun for a living.
Yeah.
So yes, I know it's tax supported and all the rest of that, but it's insane what we're doing. The layers of bureaucracy and insurance companies and all the rest of this in our medical field, and the wages they're paid, the wages are way out of line.
Yeah, it's the invisible costs that we don't see. Is we think the costs are just for the medical procedure. No, it's for the 10 bureaucrats supporting that doctor and nurse is what you're actually paying for. But elections have consequences. Seattle tax hike is set to pass. On these early voting returns, and this is a head tax. They want to pass a tax on every employee, big business, big businesses employ. So if you're Amazon, which we get to a story here in a minute, and you have a bunch of workers in Seattle, you're going to have to pay.
Biggest employer in Seattle.
You're going to have to pay the city of Seattle a bunch of money just because you employ people. It seems backwards.
Yeah.
There's something fundamentally backwards about punishing people for hiring people.
Yeah. Well, and I think in this case, there's something else to it. It's if you're a small business, up to 2 or a startup. So of course, tech bros get their own private cutout on it. Up to $2 million in revenue a year, you don't pay anything. Currently, you pay something because they already have the tax in place. But so what they're going to do is small business won't pay anything, but large businesses that employ huge numbers of people, especially like Amazon, are going to pay, I think, like 0.7% of their revenue, something like that. Or maybe it's 0.7% of their payroll costs. If you're in a thin margin business like Amazon's in, I mean, you don't make a lot of money selling shoes through 3 different distributors on Amazon.
Well, and Amazon has at least recently announced they're laying off 14,000 employees. They're calling it over culture, not cost. They're not laying off because of AI. But amazingly, most of those layoffs are happening in Seattle. It seems to me that one effect is the other, right? Amazon looks at the polling data and says this is going to pass, so I'm laying people off before it passes, so I don't have to deal with any potential penalties that might be involved. Yeah.
And when even now in California, I guess they have these rules. If you're going to close a business down, you got to give like 6 months notice and all this other stuff. But the thing about that is that, like any big business, because Amazon employs like over 1 million people, I think. Bureaucracy sets in. Especially if you're profitable and make $30 billion a year in profit like Amazon does, you start adding people. And then you find out that having more people doesn't make you more efficient, it makes you less efficient. So you cut a layer out. And that is like, I think it's less than 1% of their administrative staff.
Yeah, it was like 2% of their administrative staff or something like that. It's a drop.
Yeah.
In a big company like that, it's a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
Now, for each of those people, it's a tragedy.
It's a tragedy, especially if you're an older worker, because if you're an older, like in your 60s, and lose your job, it's like losing a spouse or a major illness. It really affects you emotionally, mentally, much less financially.
Yeah, and you're going to have to. The older you are, the more you're going to have to shift essentially careers, right?
Yeah. You
go from working for somebody to being consultants and that kind of thing. Yeah. And that's a difficult mental shift.
Yeah.
But the reality is, economics in the world don't wait for anybody, right? It's, the world keeps spinning regardless
of New York City though.
Regardless.
I want to go to one of them government grocery stores. That's going to be nice, man.
I have a friend who talked about she visited the Soviet Union back in the day. She spent a month there, and they went to the grocery stores and stuff. Empty.
Yeah,
they had one thing and
only Tucker Carlson apparently likes Soviet grocery stores.
No, he likes the Russian grocery stores.
Russian, yeah.
Yeah, because the Russian grocery stores aren't state-owned.
Yeah.
There's a difference between a state-owned grocery store and a mob-owned grocery store. The mob-owned grocery store will have stuff on the shelves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, they will. All right. So we're talking about our elections earlier, and Jay Jones won the Virginia Attorney General's race. And, you know, the question is, what does it say about voter priorities? I'm not surprised, right? We know that, pick your side, political left, political right, they care more about their team than they do about their morality.
Morality, yeah.
And
no.
so the issue with this
team
here,
red, team blue.
Yeah, Jay Jones said some, shall I say, distasteful stuff.
No, he said some miserably horrible, immoral, should have got him fired from being dog catcher, much less attorney general, because they're supposed to uphold the law. He said that, you know, he fantasized about killing a Republican political office holder and wanted his kids to die as well. He said they deserve to. And I mean that, yeah, we have First Amendment rights, but do you want somebody who's the chief law enforcer in your state to have that kind of attitude? Because that kind of attitude will sway your thinking about how you want to enforce the law. It has to.
Yeah, it's at some point, don't we have to turn down, I mean, we talk about, you know, turning down the political rhetoric, but at some point, don't we have to, as voters, have to enforce that?
Yeah.
And that you enforce that at the ballot box?
Yeah.
And maybe the choice is done before, right? Maybe these choices need to be done in primaries. Maybe we need better primary candidates. Maybe we need people who aren't afraid to vote out the political establishment.
Or as Libertarian, eliminate 90% of their jobs, we don't have to worry about it. Maybe 100%. I don't know.
All right, so we're going to talk about Prop 50 because I've got a different perspective on this.
Yeah.
So we're asking how big of a victory Prop 50's passage was for Newsom. Yeah, I don't think I think for Newsom it's meaningless. It doesn't mean anything for him individually because he's never going to make president. He's superficial. He'll get eaten. It's like he's a male version of Kamala Harris. He's an empty suit.
He's too high all the time. I mean, you gotta at least be straight some of the time if you want to get elected. Yeah. Yeah.
So the Prop 50 passed, right?
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah.
And so the question is, at some point, right? California is so poorly run.
No, really?
That at some point people are going to have to vote against Democrats, but they're not going to be willing to vote for Republicans. Yeah. So independents, libertarians, green parties, whatever they are going to have an opening. I don't know if that's 2 years, 4 years, maybe it's a decade. But at some point there will be a reckoning for that, right? Yeah. No, we're good.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, I think there will be. Yeah, no, that's not a good thing to say on TV. Yeah, no. At best, it's going to pick up 5 seats from doing this skullduggery. It's already, people think that Republicans, 40% of the votes in California, they have what, 15% of the representatives in the Assembly and the Senate, state Senate. So they're already gerrymandered to death. So they lose 5 more. In the big scheme of things, the blue states, who should be red states, by the way, because they're commie, are bleeding voters. And so it's not going to make up the difference. It's not going to make any difference at all. It's just a political show that cost us $300 million we didn't have to spend.
Yeah, and that's the real rub, right? We spent $300 million on not something that generally only benefits the National Democrat Party.
Yeah.
It benefits nobody in California, but it does benefit the National Democratic Party. Yeah. And we spent $300 million of taxpayer dollars while people are hungry in the streets. We'll use
give me $300 million and I could treat and feed most of the homeless people in the state.
Yeah.
Just give it to me. Give me a checkbook. I'll hire some people.
So Texas got 5. So Texas gerrymandered to get 5 seats for Republicans, right?
Yeah.
So then Newsom gerrymandered to get those 5 seats back, right? But now we have a bunch of other red states are going up. They're picking 1 seat here, 2 seats there, 3 seats over there. But the blue states don't have anywhere left to go. They've already gerrymandered the blue states to death. So in a real sense, the Democrats are going to be worse off than they would have been if they'd have just done nothing. And stood there and stood on their morals and say, no, this is just fundamentally wrong. We're not going to engage. 2 wrongs don't make a right. We're not going to engage in this kind of behavior.
Well, how can they stand on their morals if they can't find them?
What have we said many times? Hypocrisy is the only morals Democrats.
Do we have time for the 2 presidents? Or no?
Yes, we do. We've got 2.5 minutes, John. So we're going to let you take this 2 presidents one for you.
if I could remember the name of the second president. Oh, it's there. Thank goodness. 2 presidents. I can't read it.
It was Wilson and FDR.
Yeah, Wilson. He got the weirdest middle name, Wilson. So was it Wilson? FDR is labeled by the so-called experts as one of the greatest presidents. He's rated number 3, I think. And the other president.
No, it wasn't Wilson. It was somebody. It was somebody previous before Wilson.
I'm sorry. It's late, folks.
It's late. It's been a long night.
Yeah. So it's not McKinley. All right.
No,
well, anyway,
it's one of the goofy ones.
Just post Coolidge, right? It was no, not Coolidge.
I'm the one who said Wilson, so you're asking the wrong guy, John.
So anyway, after World War I, we had a huge deficit because we borrowed a bunch of money to float the world so they'd win World War I. And unemployment went from like 5% to 15%, and the skids went on to the economy and all the rest of this. And this guy did what you're supposed to do when times like that. He whacked government spending, cut taxes, and within a year, the economy was fine. FDR, and he's labeled a terrible president, FDR extended the depression in this country by 9 years by doing interventionist socialist stuff. So you've got people being applauded for doing things that create horrible economics and derided for doing things that create good economics.
Yeah, so who's doing the applauding, and is the question. Is it people who believe in big government are just looking and say, well, he wanted to do things, the government wants to do things, so that way we're going to applaud that kind of behavior. As we've talked about before many times, it doesn't seem like the results are the actual of the agenda.
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah, if it wasn't for FDR, the depression in this country would have ended 7 years sooner. It ended that quickly everywhere else in the world because they didn't do the crazy stuff we were doing here.
Yeah,
it ended in all of Europe, it ended in Asia, it ended in the UK because they cut spending and lowered taxes.
And on that, we're going to leave it on that. Cut spending and lower taxes as your best way to a healthy economy and a culture, because you're not getting intervention all the time.
Yeah.
Thank you, John, for being here. Thank you for serving. Thank you for being here, and for you veterans, thank you for your service. Thank the crew inside for working so hard, but most importantly of all, thank you for watching. Have a good night, and please remember to love everybody.